Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're back on the dev server and it got updated once again, and finally the Japanese destroyer that was sat in the files is now in the game. When these sets of dev servers started, there wasn't anything for Japan, and now we have the ICVP, which is right here, fully modeled and ready to go. We also have the Murasame, and then of course the AV8 for the good old Thai in the Japanese tech tree. So, quite a turnaround for Japan, having nothing, and now having things for pretty much all of its tech trees. Pretty cool. So, what is the Murasame? This is a very modern destroyer from 1976. I think it might be the most modern destroyer we have in the game, which is kind of crazy to think about. It isn't a missile destroyer though, still a gun destroyer, and has access to some pretty crazy weaponry. We start off with the main guns, where it has 3 single 5-inch Mark 16 cannons. These cannons have a very good fire rate. You can see here 16 rounds per minute, or 18 if they're aced. Doesn't have like a first stage, so you can just keep that ammo firing at a constant rate, which is incredibly good, and just less than some of the other kind of bangers in the game, but still very nice. The targeting speed also is very good, so you can get these things on target very quickly and fire them around. You also have access to a secondary of 2 sets of dual 3-inch cannons. This is actually pretty standard on a lot of kind of Japanese machines, where you have 2 separate turrets of the 3 inches, which look different, but basically have the same rounds and are the same guns. I don't know why they decided to put a kind of cover on one of them and not the other, probably because of the fact that this would be forward-facing, but I'm not sure. Who knows? The next part is it does have access to some torpedoes. They're right here. The Mark 46 torpedoes. They're incredibly tiny, and to be quite honest, not very good. So, at least in the game, maybe at some point they'll get better, but right now they are looking pretty rough. And then the rest of the X-ray, you can see some pretty cool stuff. You have, of course, the engines, some transmissions, some smoke funnels, all of the ammunition for these turrets, and then, of course, the radio, fire control, and bridge. What's cool about this vehicle as well, it does have a search radar antenna, which is up here, so you'll be able to see aircraft coming in, and for its fire director, it has one of those really fast ones. This, right here, is why stuff like the Mitscher, stuff like the Wilkinson, stuff like the Spokojny, and also the Nutrashimi, the reason why they kept going up in BR and being a terror. The fact that you can calculate 6 seconds how far you have to fire your guns, and then it updates so quickly, means that this vehicle can just keep hammering incredibly accurately over time. When it comes to the tech tree though, it is at 4-3, so it is at rank 2 unfortunately, so you can't do both sets of dailies with it. It is just between the Harukaze and also the Akizuki, so in that left-hand line, and that means you can run it with the Hatsuharu and also the Yugamo, and of course the Yuguri, the Hayami, and the Nanohi. So you have a pretty insane lineup here if you use the premiums, and even if you don't, you still have some pretty nice vehicles. Cool thing about the Yugamo is it has the good old Type 93 torpedoes, and same with the Hatsuharu, it has the Type 90s, and then you can have a gun destroyer now with this lineup to do a ton of damage. Armor-wise, there isn't really much. You know, you have 16mm of steel on the hull, then you have 19mm on the turrets themselves, so it's not really going to stop anything. You have a 250 amount of crew, which is actually quite high for a machine like this. If you have a look at the Yugamo, it's 228, Hatsuharu is 212, Harukaze is 240, Akizuki is 263. So you can see when it comes to these types of destroyers, it's on the high end, so your survivability will be a little bit better. And then since it has some pretty modern guns, it also brings along some modern ammunition choices. So, for example, for the 5-inch guns, you have access to the HE as a starter shell. You also get the SP Common, which pens up to 206mm, which is quite nice, and then also has 970 grams of explosive mass, and then also a VT, which is just the HE, but with a variable time fuse. So if you need to go after planes, or if you need to go after lighter targets, you can do with pretty good accuracy. Then on the 3-inch cannons, you have access to HE, with 8mm of pen and 500 grams of explosive mass, and then a VT version 2 with 7mm of pen and also 355.8 grams. So these are actually different rounds. You can see this one's the Mark 27, this is the Mark 31, and as an AA complement, it generally should work pretty well as long as you leave it just to do AA stuff. Another part of this is it does have access to other modifications, so you can get some depth charges. As you can see, 8 of the Mark 6s and 144 of the other ones. I don't know if they're modeled on the machine right now, because 144 of them would be quite hard to find, unless it's a Hedgehog motor, which it is. So this thing right here is the Hedgehog motor. Means that you can fire a bunch of them forwards and be able to annihilate whatever's in front of you. I don't think they added that arc, which was on the last dev server yet. And then also you have some depth charges. I'm guessing on depth charge launchers on the back. That's usually how these go. So yeah, you have some secondaries. The secondaries aren't really that useful, to be honest. Normally I don't run them, I just run the torpedoes, but with these ones, they're not great. I wonder if they're going to add a torpedo mode for them, because only going 7 kilometers in a destroyer is not fantastic. It could definitely be better. They haven't done this camos yet. Maybe at some point they'll do them, but at least right now they're not in the game. Hopefully they will be. And then also, at the same time, you just have, you know, the general parts of it, which make it very fun. So you can see here with the guns, they do actually turn pretty quickly. Everything like runs pretty well. The 3-inch cannons have a very good fire rate on them, so they can just absolutely annihilate anything. I really think going after planes with them is probably the way to go, especially if you have access to the VT, because they can do stuff like that and just annihilate targets super quickly. And then when you have a look at the main guns and what they're able to do, you can see the reload on them is actually quite nice. So putting out firepower consistently is going to be really good. And that is something that you really need with vehicles like this. You need something that can just consistently put out damage. And that's what makes stuff like the British 4-7 destroyers really strong, and also the American 5-0 destroyers really strong. Now, for a vehicle like this, it only has 3 of them, which is why it's much lower BR, but with the updating calculation time you can see there, you can be so accurate that if you ever face stuff which is 3-7, 4-0, 4-3, you're just gonna absolutely rip it apart. And that's without even using any of the 3-inch cannons as well, which will provide secondary support to what you're firing at. The speed of this thing is also pretty good. That's something that should be mentioned as well. And also, even though the torpedoes aren't great, because they're on these tiny mounts here, they actually have a really wide range that you can fire them at. I usually like my torpedoes being able to fire at the same side, but at least with these ones, they actually will fire out and get some good speed behind them and hammer. So overall, I mean, you can't be mad with this machine. It's an incredibly modern one. I think it's another kind of step towards that missile kind of destroyer stuff that people talk about, and getting added to the game. And then eventually what we'll see is just more and more of these kind of crazy vehicles that are going to be added, and they're going to be absolutely crazy. This one though I think is pretty fun, and I hope we see more of these types of things as we kind of go forward. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.